When life gets hard, maybe you lose loved ones, friends move away, or you start to wonder and worry about whether the life you're living is the one you've been called to live. How do you have joy in these moments? It's a hard question. And in this episode, I want to try to help you answer it. What's going on, guys? Welcome to this episode of the Pursuit of Calling podcast. If you like this episode, give us a like, give us a follow, leave a comment on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you can, because we're on all the platforms, guys. And if you like it, you can also share it out on your platforms as well. And then if you like this podcast, if you like it enough, you can also donate a little bit of money by going to Buy Me a Coffee. The link is in the show notes of this episode and in the description of this podcast. And I'd really appreciate that. If you're getting value from it and you want to say thank you, that'd be a great way to do that. Even $1, that'd be awesome. And then finally, you can send me a message. You can do that via Instagram or via email, which is also, again, in the show notes. What's going on, guys? So in this episode, as you already know, we're talking about joy. How joy is greater than happiness. It's not the same thing. So I want to quickly start off with a definition of what joy is. It's choosing to respond to external circumstances with inner contentment and satisfaction. And as a Christian, and for the Christians that are listening, we know that God will use these experiences to accomplish His work in and through our lives, right? So that's where our peace comes from. That's where this contentment and satisfaction comes from. And whenever we're talking about this episode, as you already heard or have already read a few times probably, that this episode is called Joy on the Journey, or staying joyful on the journey. And what I mean by that is, how do you have that inner contentment, that inner peace, like no matter the circumstances that you're going through, regardless of the circumstance, right? Like regardless of whenever you maybe fail to meet your own expectations, maybe whenever you lose a loved one, or life just keeps throwing these curveballs at you that you don't expect. Like, how do you stay joyful in those moments? It's a hard question. So I want to keep diving into that. First though, one of the first things you want to think about right now is remembering what your calling is and why you're doing it. It can be frustrating when you have a calling and your calling, but feel like life keeps getting in the way, or maybe there's something devastating happens. And you're working towards it, and life gets in the way, and you don't know how to deal with it. However, there's a bigger purpose. I know that there's a bigger purpose on my life, and that doesn't stop me because of my circumstances. I have muscular dystonia, as you know, just like that definition said earlier, that joy is an internal response of how we choose to respond to external circumstances. The thing with my dystonia, I'm going to skip down in my notes a little bit just because this is where my mind's going right now. My muscular dystonia, it's in my body, right? There's a lot, you can have stress, you can have anxiety, you can have other external factors happening. The reason I say my dystonia is external is because it's external to my mind. That so many other circumstances are external to your mind, external to your heart, the mind is where this stress is being constructed, but it's also where this peace can be created. This internal peace that comes from your soul, comes from your inner being, that of remembering, looking and remembering why you're doing it. I'm going to jump ahead now and saying remembering why you're working towards something is remembering the vision is looking towards the future. You have a reason, right, why you're working towards, why you want to live in your calling, why you want to work towards a particular goal. And now we've said before that your calling goes with you wherever you go. And that's a great to remember as well. And it gives you inner joy that wherever you go, you are a representative for your calling. But whenever you know what your calling is, like, and you can apply it to a particular goal, you have something to work towards, and you can remember, why am I doing this right now? Why am I so stressed out? Why am I doing this podcast personally? Like, why am I doing this podcast? Well, I'm going to be honest with you guys. Part of me did not want to sit down and record this episode today. I'm tired. I sat down and I'm recording it right now because I know that this is a part of my calling. This is part of me being able to have joy in the circumstance of being tired, of being in pain, and remembering that this is going into your ears right now, and hopefully giving you reminding you of that joy, or giving you a look into what this joy is, and helping you have joy on the journey of your calling. Like, I want to be able to have that impact in people's lives, and this podcast for me is a piece of that. So let me kind of put that in more of a practical sense. This isn't in my notes, so bear with me. Whenever I'm sitting down to do this podcast, I'll think about it like today when I didn't want to do it. I knew I was still going to. I knew, because the reason I knew I was still going to, here we go, is you might have to go back and listen to this again. The reason I sat down and decided to record is because I have a forward-focused vision on what I'm working towards. Like we said before, what am I working towards? I'm working towards being a life coach. I'm working on changing lives. And that brings me joy, knowing that this podcast, me sitting down recording right now on August 4th at 2:50 p.m., it brings me joy knowing that this plays a part in my calling. For a greater purpose, for something that is greater than me. And that's another thing to remember, that your purpose is greater than you. It's more than you. It's greater than yourself. It's therefore, this isn't to be daunting. This isn't to be scary. It's to remind you that that you can have joy knowing that this calling, this good and holy calling that you have on your life, is something that's on you in order to make other people's lives better, in order to love other people, in order to serve other people. I think maybe some people don't understand how that you can find joy in that. How can you find joy in something that isn't for yourself? And I would bear the question, how do you find joy in something that's only for you? And I know we're talking about these circumstances of I'm not just tired right now, man. I'm in pain. My shoulders hurt. My neck is all kinked up. I probably slept weird last night, part of me would rather be taking a nap. But I know I want to get this recorded so that Ian hopefully has time to edit it and get it so we can get it into your ear holes, and so that you can then experience whatever you're going to experience whenever you listen to this episode. Okay, but let's move on. I'm happy I got to say that to you guys. So if you again, I'm going to stop real quick. If you want to let me know how this podcast is going, go ahead, put in a comment, and let me know. So another thing I do is I don't know. I believe that no, I want you to think about it now. I want you to think about that now. Do you find joy in the calling that you believe you have in your life? If not, maybe it's time to reevaluate, or maybe it's time to ask a friend where you can improve. What do I mean by that? So let's go back to the first part. Is I asked, do you find joy in the calling that you have on your life, that you believe you have on your life? If you don't see joy, maybe you don't know what your calling is. You're I can't have joy in something I don't know what it is. And I say, we've talked about it before, you can always go back to God. You can ask him, but you can always be like, you can always go back to him and be like, hey, God, like, I know you have a calling in my life, not just to serve others. That's your call, is to serve others. And then you can figure out what that way means for you. And then you go, like, okay, like, how do we're going to talk about that in a different episode about like, how do you really like understand what your calling is? But we're going to move on. There's a whole other episode I'm going to record about all that. So, but if it's time to reevaluate, and maybe it's time to, like I said, go to God, think about what you enjoy doing, and we're going to talk about that in a future episode. And maybe, ask a friend though where you can improve. Ask your friend what you're good at, and maybe ask your friend, like, maybe your friend sees something on you that you don't see yourself. And they're a friend that's going to tell you the truth and like be like, hey, like, you're actually really great at speaking life into people, or you're really great at tech. You're really great at tech, or the way you work with the way you are with kids is amazing, or like, man, you just make delicious food. You're a great cook. Like, man, like, maybe that's not something you thought about before. And maybe maybe these are the ways that you can provide joy to other people and have joy on this journey yourself. I want to move into a small one other part real quick, when we're talking about when falling short of your own expectations. Now, I just mentioned that you can ask a friend where you can improve. Now, think about the times when you didn't meet your own expectations that you've had of yourself. When didn't you meet? Like, you ask your friend where you can improve, where you didn't meet maybe their expectations of you. But how about this? How about this? Like, you think about when you had an expectation of yourself and you failed to meet that expectation. And maybe I shouldn't use the word failed, but we'll use it in this context. That can get pretty discouraging in those instances whenever you feel like you should have done better. You could have done better, but you didn't. Like, it's good to remember that it's okay to fall short, as long as you don't stay there and you don't keep falling short. It's like I love the term failing forward, right? Like, it's not really a failure, it's a learning experience. Like John Maxwell will say, like, sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. So, or sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. I might have messed that up. And like Lee said in his episode, like, you don't actually like fail. Like, whenever he said his take on failure was like, you only fail when you don't start. So if you've already started, you haven't failed. And so then whenever you fall short of an expectation that you had on yourself, or maybe you missed the mark on hitting a certain goal, well, then you reevaluate. You see what maybe you did wrong or could have done better. You ask a friend, and you get going again. Like, you get going again. And you go back to what we were talking about before. You remember what you're doing and why you're doing it, and that can give you motivation as to figure out like what you need to do to improve. I'm talking in circles. We're going to keep going. Okay. And then, there's one last thing I just want to say. If you haven't started yet, if you don't know what your calling is and you haven't been looking, well, now's the time to start. You don't want to get to the end of your life and realize that you never pursued your calling. That's why I love this podcast. That's why I love doing it, and I love the name, because it's called The Pursuit of Calling. I think everybody, in some sense, tries to pursue that, even if they don't know that they're doing it. And the reason so many people don't have true joy is because they never really understand what their calling is. And that hurts, like me internally, to think that like some people just don't experience true joy. Because I believe the source of joy as a Christian, the source of joy I know comes from God, comes from Christ. And so many people don't know that. And I feel like I've been leaning into my faith more in this podcast, especially as I've been doing it on my own. And like, I mean, Sean and I talked about it a lot, but like I've been leaning into it a lot more personally. And like this, I'm leaning into that, and maybe this is becoming an actual Christian podcast, but I'm really hoping there's people that listen to this that don't particularly have faith that still get a lot out of this, that still hear what I'm saying, and find joy in their calling, or learn to have joy in their calling. Maybe it's something you didn't think about that you had before. So just take a moment, think about your calling, like think about where you fall short in accordance to it. We all fall short of certain expectations, fall short of others' expectations, and especially fall short of our own. Yeah, we especially fall short of our own expectations. I know I do all the time. So, and that's not to be hard on yourself. It's just to it's good to have expectations of yourself. But it's just like, you think about that, you think about what you're doing and why you're doing it. If the why doesn't bring you joy, then you're doing the wrong thing. We're just going, ooh, that was good. If your why doesn't bring you joy, then you're doing the wrong thing. And you're looking at the wrong place. You're getting joy from the wrong source. So just think about that. And I'll leave you there with that. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you next time. Peace.